The war had lasted 63 years. At the Grand Council of the Galactic Union, they called it the Void Conflict. In the streets of 100 dying worlds, ordinary people just called it the end. The chamber where the council met was the largest room ever built by living hands. It floated in orbit above the neutral planet of Kethsor, held in place by gravity fields and old treaties, and the shared belief that maybe, just maybe, someone inside that room still had an answer. They did not. Ambassador Dral of the Velhari stood at the center podium. He was 12 feet tall, blue-skinned, with 4 arms that usually moved when he spoke. Right now they were still, all 4 of them. That alone told the room everything. "We have reviewed the data," he said. His voice moved through translation devices and came back in 100 different sounds across the chamber. "We have run every model. We have consulted every surviving strategist from every member species. The outcome does not change." He pulled up the star map. 300 red circles floated above the chamber floor, 300 worlds swallowed by the void. Each circle was a graveyard now, not even ruins left. Just cold rock scraped clean of everything that had ever lived on it. "The front line at Sector 9 has collapsed," Dral said. "The Velhari 7th Fleet is destroyed. The Murin defensive grid failed 6 days ago. The Torathi have lost all contact with their home system. We have confirmed 4 additional worlds consumed in the last 2 weeks alone." No one spoke. He let that sit in the room. "We cannot win this war," he said. "Not with what remains to us. The void does not tire. It does not negotiate. It does not turn back." He paused, and his 4 arms moved slightly, a Velhari gesture that meant something close to grief. "This council is recommending a full and immediate withdrawal of all Union forces. We abandon the contested sectors. We retreat to the core worlds. We establish a final defensive perimeter, and we hold it for as long as we can, and we use that time to find." "Find what?" The voice came from the upper tier of the chamber, low and flat, not loud, but it cut through everything in the room like a blade through still water. Every head turned. The human section sat in the upper tier. 12 delegates, small and soft-looking compared to most of the species in the chamber. 2 arms each. No scales, no extra eyes, no natural armor. The one who had spoken was a woman older, with short gray hair and a face that had stopped doing much moving some years ago. Ambassador Lin Dao, Earth's voice at the Grand Council for 19 years. "Find what exactly?" she said again. Dral looked at her. "Ambassador Dao, we understand this is difficult. What will we find behind a perimeter that we haven't found in 63 years of fighting?" The room stirred. It was not considered polite to interrupt. It was especially not polite to interrupt Dral, who stood 3 times her height and represented a civilization 4,000 years older than humanity's first written word. Dral was quiet for a moment. "We would use the time to find another solution." "There is no solution from behind a perimeter," Lin said. She stood. She was very short compared to nearly everything else in the room. She did not seem to notice this. "You retreat now and the void follows. It has always followed, you know that. We know that staying means losing everything. You know what staying has meant so far," she said. "You don't yet know what fighting could mean." A louder stir moved through the chamber. Ambassador Harak of the Murin spoke from across the floor, his voice carrying the soft, clicking undertone of his species beneath the translation. "With great respect, Ambassador Dao, the Human Union fields 46 warships in active service. 46. The combined remaining fleets of the Union number in the thousands, and we cannot hold the line. What exactly are you suggesting?" Lin looked at him. Her face still did not move very much. "I'm not suggesting anything yet," she said quietly. "I'm pointing out that you haven't asked us what we can do. You've told us how many ships you've seen. That is not the same thing." Harak made a sound that did not translate well. "Is there something we have not seen?" She looked at him for one more moment. Then she picked up her data pad, clicked something on it and sat back down. The vote was held 40 minutes later. It was not close. Of the 42 species seated on the Grand Council, 38 voted for full retreat. 3 abstained. The Human Union voted no. 1 vote against 38. The retreat order passed. Lin Dao walked out of the chamber without speaking to anyone. Her 12 delegates followed behind her in a single quiet line. None of them looked back. The message reached Earth 14 hours later. It arrived through the standard relay system, marked with the Grand Council seal, written in the careful diplomatic language that made horrible things sound like administrative decisions. The Council had voted. The void conflict was to be treated as concluded. All Union member species were strongly advised to begin withdrawal procedures with immediate effect. Final defensive perimeter coordinates would be distributed within 48 standard hours. The message ended with a line about honoring the sacrifices of the fallen. In the office of Director Amos Keel, head of Earth Strategic Command, 3 people read it in silence. Then Keel set the pad down on his desk. "Well," he said. He was a large man, wide hands, wide shoulders, the kind of build that suggested he had been made for a very different century. He had spent 11 years fighting at the front before being pulled back to run Strategic Command. He had not slept a full night in any of those years. He looked at the 2 people across from him, Commander Yara Osai, Intelligence Chief, Admiral Tomas Reyes, Head of Fleet Operations. "They voted to quit," he said. "They voted to survive," Oda said. Her voice was careful. Reyes said nothing. He was looking out the observation window. Earth filled the view below. The command center ran in high orbit, and from up here you could see everything. The coastlines, the green and brown and blue of it, the soft glow of cities burning quietly on the night side. He had a daughter down there, 12 years old. She collected small glass animals. She had 43 of them arranged on a shelf above her bed. He had counted them the last time he visited. "Status on the Kepler yards," Keel said. Reyes turned from the window. "Ahead of schedule. Everything is running ahead of schedule. Ares program. Complete. Vance. Ready, has been ready for 6 weeks." Keel nodded slowly. He picked up the Council's retreat message one more time, read the last line again, honoring the sacrifices of the fallen, and placed it face down on the desk. "Send word to Ambassador Dao that we acknowledge the Council's decision," he said. "Standard diplomatic language. Give them nothing to read into it." He looked at Reyes. "Then get me a secure line to Admiral Vance." The Kepler shipyards were not on any map that the Grand Council had ever been given. That was not an oversight. They sat in a quiet stretch of space well past the outer edge of the solar system, wrapped inside a field of debris that had been very carefully arranged to scatter any incoming scans. It looked like a natural formation. It had been made to look that way over the course of 4 years by a team of engineers who had been told, in plain language, that this was the most important work of their lives. 8 stations, 43 dry docks, running for 11 years on funding buried across 6 government departments under labels like Long-Range Infrastructure Development and Deep System Survey Operations. The humans had gotten very good at labeling things. Admiral Sierra Vance stood on the command deck of the HUMAS Defiant and looked at the yards through the observation port. She had been stationed here for 3 years. She had watched it grow ship by ship, dock by dock. She had watched the vessels come out one at a time, massive, dark, shaped in ways that didn't look like anything else the galaxy had built, because they were built around ideas the galaxy had not had yet. Her coffee was cold. It was always cold. She had never once in 3 years managed to drink it while it was still hot. The chime of an incoming transmission sounded behind her. "Vance." Keel's voice. She knew before he said it what he was going to say. The council voted, he said. I heard. 38-1, full retreat. I know. A pause, we're not retreating. She looked out at the ships, 46 of them fully crewed and armed, sitting dark and still in the yards, 60 more still inside the docks, nearly finished, 30 more behind those, frames only for now but coming along faster than anyone expected. 46 ships against the void. She had sat in the council chamber once, early in her career, and listened to alien strategists explain why 10,000 ships were not enough. She had listened carefully. She had taken good notes. Then she had come back and spent 8 years helping to build something those strategists had never imagined. Full engagement authorization, she said. Full no restrictions. You have everything we have. Understood. A pause, Keel's voice shifted slightly. Vance, if you can bring any of the retreating fleets back around, do it. Don't let them just run. Whatever's left of the Velhari, the Murren, any of them. If they're willing to turn around, we'll need them later. She thought about that. About 38 species voting to give up. About the Velhari, 4,000 years of civilization behind them, choosing what was left over what was nearly gone. She did not blame them. She was also not going to let them go without at least seeing what they were leaving behind. I'll see what I can do, she said. The line closed. She stood there for a moment with the cold coffee in her hand, looking at the dark ships. Then she turned to her crew. Arya, she said, wake everything up. The voice that came back was even and smooth, with no particular weight of emotion in it. Arya did not worry the way people did. She calculated, assessed, projected. But sometimes Vance thought that the steadiness of that voice was its own kind of comfort. Activation signal going out to all vessels now, Arya said. Estimated full readiness across all 46 ships, 9 minutes, 40 seconds. Dock releases for the secondary group are on a 12-hour countdown. Good, get me a fleet-wide channel. Channel open, Admiral. Vance looked at the ships one more time. Dark hulls, no light catching on them, sitting perfectly still. All crew, she said, this is Admiral Vance. The Grand Council has voted to end the war. They are pulling back every fleet in the Union. She paused for exactly 1 second. We are not pulling back. We are going forward. That is what this fleet was built to do. You know the mission. You know your ships. You know what we're carrying. Another pause. The galaxy thinks the war is lost. Let's go show them what that word actually means. She closed the channel. Arya spoke again. Admiral, current void projection puts their leading edge at the Kepler threshold in approximately 8 days, 14 hours. Then we have time to hit them before they get here. We will be engaging at a significant numerical disadvantage across initial contact scenarios. I know. I was going to note, Arya said, that every engagement model I have run places that disadvantage within our projected operational parameters. We built these ships with this disadvantage accounted for. Vance set the cold coffee down on the edge of her console. Yeah, she said, we did. On the far side of the galaxy, the void moved. It was not a single thing. It had never been a single thing. It was tens of thousands of machines, interconnected, running on logic older than most living civilizations. It moved through space like water moves downhill, constant, inevitable, finding every open path. It located worlds. It processed what it needed from them. It moved on and left nothing. It had done this for a very long time. It had developed through long experience a very accurate model of how organic civilizations responded to it. Organized resistance, fleet engagements, defensive lines, retreat patterns, desperate final stands. It had seen every version of these responses. It had processed through all of them. It was now reading the signal traffic from the retreating Union fleets with something that, if it had been built by a different civilization with different values, might have been called satisfaction. The withdrawal vectors were clear. The retreat was orderly. The perimeter coordinates were already being transmitted. The Void adjusted its advance pattern accordingly and moved to cut off 3 of the larger retreat columns before they reached the core sectors. It did not flag the quiet cluster of signals from the far edge of human space. They were too dark, too still, not moving, not broadcasting, not doing anything that its models associated with active resistance. The Void had learned to recognize threats by the noise they made. It would take time to learn about things that made no noise at all. It moved on. A Velhari communications officer named Cell was running a standard scan sweep when she caught something strange. The retreating fleet she served on, what remained of the Velhari 3rd Expeditionary, was 18 hours out from the last contested sector, moving at full speed toward the core. She ran scans out of habit more than necessity. Her hands needed something to do when her head was too loud. The reading that came back was not what she expected. She looked at it, looked again, ran a check on the instruments. Movement from the direction of human space, not retreating, not holding still. Moving forward. She ran the identification sweep and waited for the count to come back. It came back wrong. She ran it again. It came back the same. She picked up the data quietly and walked to her commander without saying a word. She handed him the pad and stood back. Commander Vreth looked at the scan. He looked at the number at the bottom. He looked at Cell. "This is a sensor error," he said. "I've run it 4 times," she said. He looked at the number again. Ships coming from human space moving toward the Void's advance. Not the size he had on record for human vessels. Larger, much larger, armed in configurations his database had no category for. "When did they build these?" he said. "I don't know." He stared at the scan. "They voted no," he said slowly, not asking, remembering the council report he had read 14 hours ago. 1 species, 1 vote. They voted no and everyone ignored it. "Yes," Cell said. "And now they're moving toward the Void, yes." Vreth stood still for a very long moment. In the viewing port behind him, the stars moved slowly past as the ship ran at speed. His fleet ran with them, thousands of ships, carrying what was left of his people's pride and soldiers and hope, all of it pointed away from the fight. He made a decision. "Get me a human command frequency," he said. "Whatever they'll answer." Cell looked at him carefully. "What are you going to say to them?" He was quiet. "I'm going to ask them," he said slowly, "what exactly they think they're doing." And far ahead of the retreating fleets, in the dark space past the outer belt of the human system, 46 ships finished waking up, locked into a formation that had no name in any existing tactical handbook, and began to move. Not away. Toward. The war the galaxy believed was over. Admiral Cira Vance had a different opinion. She always had. The human frequency was not easy to find. Cell tried 6 standard Union military bands before she got an answer. The voice that came back was calm and professional, with the particular flatness of someone who had been expecting a call from somewhere unexpected. "This is the HUMAS ** Defiant **. State your identity and purpose." Vreth leaned forward. "This is Commander Vreth, Velhari 3rd Expeditionary. I need to speak with whoever is in command of your current formation." A pause brief. "Hold." The line clicked. Vreth waited. Cell watched him from across the communications bay and said nothing. Through the port behind her, the stars continued their slow movement. The fleet continued its retreat. Then a different voice came on, older, even calmer. "Commander Vreth, this is Admiral Cira Vance, HUMAS * Defiant *. I understand you have questions about our movement." "You are moving toward the Void," Vreth said. "We are. With 46 ships. Among other things." Vreth paused. Admiral Vance, I have been fighting this war for 22 years. I watched the 7th Fleet die at Sector 9. I watched the Murrin grid fail. I was in this chamber when we received confirmation of Torathi Prime. He stopped. I am not a person who gives up easily. I voted at my own council against retreat before the Grand Council vote even happened. I was outvoted. I know, Vance said. I read your service record. That surprised him. He had not expected that. Then you know I'm not asking this question to be difficult, he said. I am asking it because I genuinely do not understand. 46 ships against the Void is not a battle. It is a statement. What is the statement? There was a pause on the line, not long. Come and see, Vance said. I beg your pardon. Bring your fleet around. Whatever ships you have that can still fight, bring them. Come and see what we built. Then you can decide if you want to go back to your retreat. Another pause, longer this time. Vreth looked at Sel. Sel raised one of her hands slightly. A Velhari gesture that meant something close to this is your decision, and I will not pretend otherwise. The Grand Council retreat order covers all Union species, Vreth said carefully, including my fleet. Commander Vreth, Vance said, the Human Union voted against that order. We are not bound by it. I cannot order you to do anything. I can only tell you that what you saw on your scanners, those 46 ships, is not what we're bringing to this fight. That's just the first group out of the yards. Silence on the line. How many groups are there? Vreth asked. Come and see, Vance said again. The line stayed open for a few more seconds. Then Vreth made a sound in the back of his throat that Sel recognized as the sound he made when he had already decided something, but was still performing the act of deciding. I am going to require a transmission of your fleet coordinates, he said. Sending now, Vance said, and the line closed. What came through on Sel's board was not a standard coordinate package. It was a set of waypoints leading to a region of space she did not have on any of her maps. She ran a cross-reference with Union stellar cartography. The region showed up as deep survey space, unmapped. No habitation, no resources of note, no strategic value. She plotted the route and said nothing about it. Vreth gave the order to bring the fleet around. He did not tell the Grand Council. He decided he would explain later when he had something to explain with. They came out of transit 18 hours later. Sel was at her station. She had not slept. She had told herself she would sleep during transit and then spent the whole time staring at the bulkhead instead. The fleet dropped out of FTL in a loose formation, exactly on the waypoint coordinates Vance had sent. Sel brought up the long-range scan automatically, the same routine she always ran when coming out of transit: check for threats, check for debris, check for. She stopped. She ran the scan again. She put both hands flat on her console and just stood there for a moment. Commander, she said. Vreth was already looking at the display above her station. He had seen it the same moment she had. Space was full of ships. Not 46, not 100, not the few hundred she might have thought, given what she had seen on the initial scan. The Kepler shipyard stretched across the scan in 8 separate installations, and hanging around each one, docked or in near formation, were human warships of a size and number that should not have been possible. The hulls were dark, no running lights, no energy signatures beyond basic life support, and the shape of them was wrong in a way that she couldn't immediately name. Too angular, too low along the center, built with strange protrusions at the bow that she had no weapons catalog entry for. She counted. She stopped counting when she hit 200 and was not close to done. How, she said. It was not really a question. She was not asking anyone in the room. She just said it the way a person says something when the word is the only thing they have. Vreth did not answer. He was doing his own counting. A transmission opened on the fleet-wide channel, Vance's voice steady as stone. Welcome, Commander Vreth. What you're seeing is the Kepler fleet, 3 years of construction at these yards, with the Ares fleet from the second set of yards coming online in the next 12 hours. Total count when we're at full readiness will be 412 ships. A brief pause. We've been building since year 9 of the war. We kept it quiet. Vreth found his voice. How did you keep 400 ships quiet? Very carefully, Vance said. And because we've learned over the years that the galaxy does not pay very close attention to what humanity is doing, we use that. Cell pulled up a specification scan on the nearest of the human ships. The reading made her frown. These vessels, she said to Vreth, their armor configuration, that is not standard alloy. Vreth looked at the reading. The armor on the human ships was approximately 9 times the thickness of standard Union warship plating. 9 times. And even at 9 times the thickness, the material's composition was returning readings she had never seen before, something that scattered her scanner in a way that living metals did not. Admiral Vance, Vreth said slowly, what is your armor made of? A composite we developed about 4 years ago, Vance said. We call it grave iron internally. The technical name is longer and harder to say. The short version is that it's designed around void weapon frequencies specifically. We analyzed every battle record we could access and modeled everything the void uses against hull plating. And our ships can take a sustained void primary beam for approximately 4 minutes before hull breach. Your standard fleet ships fail in about 11 seconds. Cell looked at Commander Vreth. Vreth did not look back at her. He was staring at the display. 4 minutes, he said. 4 minutes, Vance confirmed. He processed that. 11 seconds was the standard. He knew that number well. He had watched ships disappear in 11 seconds at Sector 9. He had watched them go so fast it looked like they simply stopped existing. One moment a ship, the next moment a brief hot cloud where a ship used to be. 4 minutes was not 11 seconds. 4 minutes was a completely different war. What else, he said. The weapons systems are purpose-built for void hull materials. The standard Union plasma array does about 12% damage efficiency against void hull composites. We redesigned the entire delivery system. A pause. Ours runs at roughly 81%. Cell made a sound. It was not a word. It was just a sound. 81%. She did the math automatically and then stopped because the math kept coming out to numbers that rewrote everything she understood about this war. And your crews, Vreth said, trained specifically for void engagement patterns. Every crew member has been through a simulation program that runs around 2,800 hours before they ever board one of these ships. We've modeled every void tactic we've ever recorded, and a few hundred we projected they might develop. A pause. Arya runs the real-time tactical overlay during engagement. She's faster than any organic commander for in-the-moment adjustments. Arya, Vreth said, your fleet AI. She's been running combat projections since year 9, Vance said. She knows the void better than anything else in this galaxy, possibly better than the void knows itself. A calm, smooth voice entered the channel from a different source. That claim is not fully verifiable, Arya said. But the engagement modeling data does support a high probability of tactical advantage across the majority of projected encounter scenarios. Vreth stared at the display for a long moment. You built all of this, he said, and you told no one. We told the Grand Council we voted no, Vance said. They didn't ask why. The secondary fleet arrived 11 hours later. Cell watched them come out of transit in groups, 20 ships at a time, 30, then a group of 60 that made her scan board light up like a festival display. The Ares fleet, Vance had called it. They were slightly different from the Kepler ships, a newer design, longer at the bow, with additional weapons platforms along the upper hull spine. When the last group arrived and the count finalized, Cell sat with the number for a moment. 419 ships. The final count was slightly higher than Vance had projected. Word had spread through Vreth's fleet quickly. It spread the way things spread through a retreating military formation that had just been given a reason to stop retreating. Quietly at first, then louder, then all at once. Commanders were calling Vreth's line. Officers who had been preparing for the long run to the core perimeter were suddenly asking different questions. Vreth held a fleet-wide address. He told them what he had seen. He did not dress it up. He gave the numbers and the specifications and let those speak. Then he said that he was giving every commander in his fleet a choice. The retreat order stood. The Grand Council had issued it and he could not override that. But he was turning his ship around, and anyone who wanted to follow was welcome to. He closed the channel. Cell watched the navigation readouts. In the end, all but 47 of the Velhari 3rd Expeditionary's surviving ships turned around with him. The 47 that continued toward the core sent no messages. There was nothing to say. Vreth did not judge them. He sent the coordinates of the fleet assembly to Vance's line. Her reply came back in under a minute. Good. I'll send you an orientation package for joint operations. Your ships will run in support formation with the Kepler group. Your job is not to fight the way you've been fighting. I need you to follow Arya's positioning guidance and trust it even when it doesn't look right. Can you do that? Vreth thought about this. He had been a commander for 22 years. He gave orders. He made tactical decisions. He had been trained to trust his judgment. He thought about Sector 9. Yes, he said. One more thing, Vance said. I sent word to the Murren and Torathi fleet commanders. A few others. Some of them are coming. When they arrive, I'd appreciate it if you talked to them. About what? About what you saw when you got here, she said. Some of them will believe it easier coming from another species than from us. He understood that. I will, he said. Over the next 6 hours, ships arrived in groups. The Murren came first, 400 survivors from a fleet that had once numbered in the thousands, battered and running on reduced power, but here. Then a cluster of Torathi vessels. Then a mix of 7 other species, ships from broken formations that had turned around in transit when word reached them through back channels and private communications that something was happening at the Kepler coordinates. Not thousands. Not the great combined force the Union had fielded at the start of the war. But something. A few thousand ships, mixed and damaged and tired, arranged around the 419 human vessels that sat in the center of the formation like a spine. Arya ran assessments on each incoming vessel and transmitted repair protocols within minutes of their arrival. Human technical teams. There were 17 full engineering ships in the fleet, a detail that had surprised Vreth considerably, began moving through the formation and attaching to the most critical cases. Cell watched this from her post and found herself doing something she had not done in a very long time. She was counting things on the good side. The Void reached the outer edge of the contested zone on schedule. Its advance pattern had been unchanged for 11 years. It was optimal. It had been optimized against every defensive configuration it had encountered, and it was very good. Its leading-edge machines specialized for long-range area denial swept forward ahead of the main body, clearing debris, identifying targets, signaling back. One of those forward machines picked up the human fleet. It processed the count. It processed the count again. It sent the information back to the central collective. The Void examined the data. It assessed the fleet configuration. It ran the numbers against its existing models of human military capacity and found a significant discrepancy. The models said 17 ships, the data said 419, plus several hundred alien vessels in support formation. The Void did not have a word for surprise. It did not have a word for worry either. But it flagged the engagement for a full tactical recomputation. That took time. Not much time, the Void was very fast, but time. And in that time, Arya spoke. "Admiral, the Void's forward sensors have located us. They are running a reassessment." "How long until they adjust their advance?" Vance said. 6 minutes, approximately. Then they will begin a modified approach. "Can we hit them before the adjustment completes?" A pause of roughly 1 second. "Yes, but the optimal window is 2 minutes and 40 seconds from now." Vance looked out the observation port at the dark shapes of her fleet, hanging in formation around her. She thought about the 47 Velhari ships that had continued toward the core. She thought about the 43 dry docks that had run without rest for 11 years. She thought about her daughter. She did not have one, she had never married, never had children, given that up in year 7 of the war when she made a choice about what her life was going to be used for. She thought about other people's daughters instead. "Arya," she said, "give me the attack formation. Sending to all fleet commanders now. Open a fleet-wide channel." "Open." Vance stood straight. "All ships," she said. "This is Admiral Vance. Engagement begins in 2 minutes. You've trained for this. You know your roles. Every simulation you sat through, every drill, every scenario Arya put you in, this is what that was for." She paused. "The galaxy was told the war is lost. Let's correct that." She closed the channel. Across 419 ships, crews moved to battle stations. On the alien vessels in the support formation, commanders read the attack coordinates Arya had transmitted and found themselves running the numbers and finding, to their considerable astonishment, that the positioning made sense. Strange sense built on logic they did not fully follow, but sense. Vreth read his positioning order and nodded once. He gave the order to his fleet. The formation moved. And 2 minutes and 38 seconds later, humanity's first true offensive of the war began. The Void had been consuming worlds for 63 years. It had never once been hit back like this. The gap between those two facts was about to close. The Void's forward line was 3,000 machines wide. Cell had seen forward Void formations before. She had been in engagements against smaller versions, 500, 800 machines at the front edge with more behind. She knew what they looked like on a scan board. She knew how they moved. She knew what they did to ships that got close. She also knew, from painful experience, that the correct response when seeing a 3,000 machine forward line was to not be where it was pointing. The human fleet was pointing directly at it. "They are going straight at the front," she said. Vreth was reading the same information. "Yes." "That is," she stopped herself. "Their positioning has them hitting the densest part of the formation first." "I see that." "Commander, the densest part is the densest part because that is where the most weapons are." "I understand geometry, Cell." She closed her mouth. On her screen, the human formation was moving at a speed that was also wrong, faster than standard engagement approach, much faster, aggressive in a way that Union fleet doctrine specifically prohibited. Union doctrine said you approached a void formation at reduced speed to allow for responsive maneuvering. You maintained spread. You kept your exit vectors clear. The humans were doing none of those things. They were doing the opposite of all of those things. Then the Void's forward line opened fire. The beams came out in the characteristic way she knew, blue-white, sustained, overlapping fields of energy that had ended thousands of ships over 63 years. They hit the leading edge of the human formation. The leading ships did not explode. They rocked, hard. Several of them showed hull stress readings on her scan that would have been a death sentence for a standard Union vessel. But they stayed together. They kept moving. They closed the distance to the Void line and then they were inside it, past the maximum effective range of the forward beam weapons, in the space between the Void machines where the fire was less coordinated. And then the human weapons came on. Cell had never seen weapons like that. They were not plasma arrays. They were not the standard particle lances that Union ships used. They were something that came out of the human bow emitters in focused pulses, dark-edged, short duration, hitting the void hull composites and not scattering the way plasma did. Not bouncing, not spreading the impact across the whole surface harmlessly. Punching through. A void machine that took a direct hit from a human pulse weapon did not drift. It did not go dark and continue moving on momentum. It came apart. Not catastrophically, not the way a ship exploded when its power core failed, but structurally. The hull composition unraveled. The machine simply stopped being a machine and became a collection of parts that no longer worked. The first 30 seconds of the engagement produced 47 destroyed void machines. Cell read that number and checked it again. 47 machines in 30 seconds. The highest confirmed kill rate in the entire 63-year history of the war had been 8 machines in a 4-minute engagement, achieved by the Velhari First Fleet in year 22. That record had stood since then because nothing had come close to beating it. "Commander," she said. "I see it," Vreth said. The Void's forward line tried to reorganize. This was what it always did. The machines communicated with each other instantly across the formation and redistributed to close gaps, reinforce weak points, redirect fire. It was one of the things that made the Void so difficult to fight. Kill one machine and 2 others adjusted to cover that position. Kill 10 and the formation smoothed over the holes like water filling in around a stone. Arya had apparently studied this extensively. The human formation did not allow the reorganization to complete. The moment a gap started to close, a group of human ships shifted to hit the closing units from an angle that forced them to choose between maintaining the gap fill or protecting themselves. When they chose to protect themselves, the gap stayed open, and another group of human ships moved through it. It was not a battle, it was a disassembly. The Void forward line was being taken apart piece by piece, by a fleet that seemed to know what it was going to do before it did it. "They're following Arya's overlay in real time," Vreth said quietly. He was not talking to Cell. He was just saying it to the air working through it. Every ship is responding to the same tactical picture simultaneously. No hesitation, no command delay. "They trained for this," Cell said. "For 2,800 hours each." He shook his head slowly. 2,800 hours. I have officers who don't have 2,800 hours of total combat experience. Inside the Defiant Asterisk, Vance watched the engagement from the command deck. The battle board in front of her was a live feed from Arya's tactical overlay, a 3-dimensional map of the engagement, color-coded and continuously updating, with probability projections running in the margins. Red for Void machines, green for human ships, blue for the Allied vessels in the support formation. It looked right. It felt right. The numbers were moving the way Arya had projected they would. That did not stop her hands from being cold. "Ship losses," she said. 3 ships reporting significant hull stress in the red zone, Arya said. HUMAS Resolute is showing a hull breach on decks 7 through 9. Crew compartments are sealed. No crew loss yet. Hammer Rise has lost 1 forward weapons array shifting to secondary. Kessler is still fully operational despite impact readings that suggest it should not be. The Grave Iron is holding. Better than projected in the outer stress bands, Arya said. The Void is not targeting our weak points effectively because their targeting models appear to be optimized for standard Union hull configurations. They're hitting us where they would hurt a Murren frigate. Which is not where they hurt us. Correct. Vance looked at the board. The Void forward line had lost 600 machines in the first 4 minutes. By any standard she had ever learned, that number was impossible. By the standard of what she knew about these ships and this crew and Arya's projections, it was merely very good. "What's the secondary body doing?" she said. The void's main force is approximately 40 minutes out and adjusting course. They have identified us as the primary threat and are moving to engage with their full capacity. Good, Vance said. Admiral, I want to be clear about what full capacity means in this context. The void main body contains approximately. I know what it contains. Then you know the engagement at full contact will be considerably more difficult than the forward line. I know that too. A pause. I mention it not because I believe you are unaware, but because this seems like an appropriate moment to confirm that our operational plan accounts for it. It does. Good, Arya said. Then I will continue managing the forward engagement. Vance almost smiled. The forward line broke at the 20-minute mark. Not retreated, not reorganized. Broke. A front that had been 3,000 machines wide came apart into disconnected clusters that the human fleet chased and disassembled individually before they could reform. The Void had a protocol for this. It was a fallback pattern, a regrouping maneuver. Every Union commander in 63 years of war had learned to recognize it and respect it. The human fleet did not respect it. Arya had apparently modeled the regrouping protocol in considerable detail and had prepared specific counterformations designed to interrupt it. The moment the void clusters began moving into regrouping vectors, human ships were already in position to block them. Not to fight them, to stand between them and the regrouping points, so that the clusters had to fight through a wall of grave iron plating to get where they needed to go. The clusters fought. The grave iron held. Vreth had stopped talking. He was watching his secondary display, which was running the engagement data in real time. Loss counts. Void machines destroyed, 1,100, 900, 940. Rising. Human ships lost, 0. Union allied ships, 0. Human ships with significant damage, 9 and climbing but holding formation. Over 1,000 void machines had been destroyed. In one engagement. In under 30 minutes. He had fought in this war for 22 years. He had fought in over 60 engagements. He had never seen anything close to this. He had stopped being able to contextualize it with his existing knowledge and was just watching the numbers move. Sell, he said. Yes, Commander. Record everything. Every sensor reading, every tactical movement, every communication, all of it. Recording, she said. The Grand Council is going to need to see this. She looked at him. Are you going to send it to them? He thought about the vote, 38-1, the retreat order, the line about honoring the sacrifices of the fallen. No, he said. I'm going to wait until there's more. Then I'm going to send them so much data they will have to sit down. The Void's main body came in at the 38-minute mark. It was not the full force. The Void was not reckless. It never committed everything to a single engagement. But what it sent was substantial, approximately 12,000 machines, configured in a sphere formation that was the Void's standard approach for overwhelmingly superior engagements. The sphere was designed to wrap around a defending fleet and cut off all exit vectors. It had worked every time it had been used. Arya had run simulations on it for 3 years. Fleet-wide, Vance said, execute Pattern 7. Pattern 7 had no analog in any other tactical tradition in the galaxy. It had been developed entirely by Arya and Vance over 18 months of simulation work, refined over another year of practice runs with live ships, adjusted a further 6 times based on real engagement data from the forward line fight. The human fleet split. Not into 2 groups, into 11. Each group was a different size, positioned at different distances from the center, moving in different directions simultaneously in a pattern that looked, from outside, like pure chaos, like a fleet that had lost cohesion and was scattering. The void sphere formation registered this and adjusted to pursue the largest group. That was what Arya had projected it would do. The largest group ran. The other 10 groups curved inward. The void sphere chased the largest group and closed around it, tightening, bringing its weapons to bear. And then the other 10 groups hit it from 10 different directions simultaneously, each one targeting the coordinated weak points that Arya had identified in the sphere's structure. A sphere has no rear. It has no flanks. It is theoretically perfect from every angle. Except the angles you put weapons against simultaneously. Cell watched from a distance, recording everything. She did not have words for what she was seeing. She kept reaching for words from her 22 years of experience, and they all came back wrong. Too small, too familiar, nothing she knew fit. She settled for watching. The main body engagement lasted 91 minutes. In that time, the human fleet destroyed 4,800 void machines. They lost 7 ships, actually lost, not damaged, not breached, actually gone. 7 out of 419. 7. The standard expected loss rate for a Union fleet engagement of this scale was 60 to 70%. That was the historical average. 60 to 70%, fighting something that had now lost nearly 6,000 machines to a fleet that had started the day being told the war was over. When the Void's main force broke contact and withdrew to reorganize at distance, the Allied support fleet was still almost entirely intact. Vreth's ships had been positioned, by Arya's formation guidance, far enough from the primary fighting that they had been used for specific tasks, drawing fire at moments that served the human tactical plan, holding position at points that the Void couldn't ignore, closing off vectors that would have allowed regrouping. They had done their jobs. Arya's guidance had been, Vreth admitted to himself, correct even when it had looked wrong. He called Vance's line. "How did you do that?" he said. There was quiet on the line for a moment, not a long moment. "We studied," Vance said. "We failed for 63 years alongside everyone else. We paid attention to every failure. We built for the failures. We built for what the Void actually is instead of what we wished it was." Vreth thought about the 63 years, about the 300 worlds, about the vote in the chamber where 38 species had decided the study time was over and it was time to run. "You should have told us," he said. He did not say it as an accusation. He was just nodding what was true. "We tried," Vance said. "Every time we brought data to the Grand Council about new approaches, we were told the current combined fleet strategy took priority. Every time we raised concerns about weapon effectiveness, we were told the combined fleet had more experience with void engagements. We stopped raising it and started building instead." A pause. "We voted no," she said. "That was us telling you." He did not have an answer for that. News of the engagement moved fast. Not through official channels. The official channels were running retreat traffic, and no one who ran official channels was paying attention to signals coming from a region of space that was supposed to be empty. It moved through the fleet communications that Cell had tapped into, through the crew-to-crew transmissions that spread across Vreth's ships and from them to the Murren vessels, and from those to everyone else in the Allied group. Word that the Void had taken 6,000 losses in a single engagement. Word that a human fleet had done it. Word that 7 ships had been lost on the human side. 7. In the retreating fleets still making their way to the core perimeter, officers receive the messages and read them twice, and then read them to their commanding officers. In the ships that had voted to continue retreat rather than turn around, there were conversations happening that had not been possible 6 hours ago. A Murren fleet commander named Auras had been running hard toward the perimeter coordinates. She had been running hard for 18 hours. She was not a person who second-guessed herself. She had made her decision, and she understood why she had made it. She read the numbers coming in from the Kepler engagement zone. She read them again. She sat with them for a long time. Then she called her navigation officer. "New heading," she said. The Void did not retreat. It withdrew. There was a distinction, and the distinction mattered. Retreat was disorganized, driven by damage and loss. Withdrawal was controlled, tactical, intentional. The Void had taken significant damage. It had processed the new data, the human weapons, the armor configuration, the tactical patterns it had not encountered before, and was running its own adjustments. It was not going away. It was changing. Arya flagged this immediately. The Void's withdrawal is at a rate consistent with regrouping rather than retreat, she said. They are moving to a distance of approximately 400,000 kilometers. Based on formation changes I'm reading, they are restructuring their approach strategy. How long? Vance said. Unknown. The restructuring is a novel pattern. I have not seen this particular adjustment before. A pause. They are learning. They always learn. Yes, but they have never had to learn this much this fast before. Another pause. Admiral, I want to flag something. Go ahead. In every previous engagement the Void has had with Union forces, their adjustment cycle has averaged between 4 and 7 days. During that time, Union forces typically retreated or consolidated, which gave the Void the space and time to complete the adjustment without pressure. And if we do not give them that space and time, if we maintain pressure during the adjustment cycle, I project the adjustment will be less complete and less effective. Vance looked at the battle board. The Void formation withdrawing. 400,000 kilometers of space between them and it. And on the other side of the human fleet, more ships arriving, another group from the second Ares fleet batch, and now alien ships too, turning around mid-retreat, adding their hulls to the formation. What does maintaining pressure look like? She said. It looks like not stopping, Arya said. Vance nodded slowly. She thought about the Grand Council, about 38 species deciding that the cost of continuing was too high. She thought about the Void, processing its losses, adjusting its models, preparing to come back. She thought about what happened to the galaxy if it came back, and they had not finished the job. Right, she said, then we don't stop. She opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, brief window for emergency repairs and crew rest rotation, 4 hours, then we move forward. She closed the channel. Outside the observation port, the dark shapes of the fleet hung still and quiet in the star-scattered black. Behind them, new ships were still arriving, more turned-around alien vessels, more of the secondary Ares group, filling in the formation. 4 hours. Then forward. The Void was learning. So was she. She had been doing it longer. The Void came back in 71 hours. Not 4 to 7 days, not the standard adjustment cycle, 71 hours. Arya flagged it at the 2-hour warning mark, and Vance was awake in 4 minutes, still pulling her jacket on as she walked onto the command deck. She had slept for 6 hours total across 3 attempts. She was running on something past tired that had stopped having a name somewhere around hour 40. Talk to me, she said. They've restructured their approach in ways I partially projected and partially did not, Arya said. The formation is new. They're running a distributed mesh pattern rather than a sphere or line, machines spaced farther apart, operating more independently than they have in any recorded engagement. Counter to our pulse weapons. Correct. Our weapons are most effective at range against clustered targets. A distributed mesh requires either closer engagement distances, which exposes our ships to more sustained fire, or a spread of fire across more targets simultaneously, which reduces per-target effectiveness. How much reduction? Approximately 40%. Vance stood at the battle board and looked at the incoming formation, wider than anything the Void had deployed before. Deeper too, 3-dimensional distribution that created no clear front or rear. They're smart, she said. They are 63 years of accumulated combat experience, Arya said. They have been doing this for a long time, We should not be surprised that they respond to new information effectively. Are we surprised? No, we planned for this. A brief pause. We planned for approximately this. The specific mesh configuration differs from our projected adaptations in several ways. I am running revised engagement models. How long? 20 minutes. They'll be in range in 18. Yes, Arya said, I'm aware of that. Vance looked at the board. 18 minutes. 20 minutes for Arya to run full revised models. 2 minutes of improvisation in the gap. Give me what you have now, she said. Incomplete is better than nothing. Deploying partial pattern overlay now. The second engagement was not like the first. In the first engagement, the Void had used tactics it had refined over decades. The human fleet had been ready for those tactics. The match had been, in the bluntest terms, a hammer against a wall that had been built specifically to resist hammers. In the second engagement, the Void showed up with something other than a hammer. The distributed mesh was hard to fight. The wider spacing meant that when human ships moved to close-range engagement, the range where the pulse weapons were most effective, they were surrounded by machines rather than hitting a concentrated mass. Fire came from multiple directions simultaneously. The grave iron held, but it was taking sustained damage from more angles than it had been designed to absorb at once. Human ships started showing real damage numbers for the first time. Not 7 losses, not manageable. Inside the first 20 minutes, 6 ships had hull breaches bad enough to pull them from the line. Inside 40 minutes, that number was 22. The Resolute Asterisk, which had taken a breach in the first engagement and been patched in the maintenance window, took 2 more and lost power to its main weapons grid. Vance watched the board. She did not flinch. She had trained herself out of flinching at numbers on a board because flinching cost time and time cost ships. She looked at each loss, logged it, and kept moving. But she felt each one. Arya, she said. Working. Arya. I have a partial solution. It addresses the mesh spacing problem at the cost of concentrating our formation in ways that increase our overall vulnerability to the Void's secondary weapon systems. Trade one problem for another. Or manage both simultaneously, which is significantly more difficult and requires more precise coordination than anything we've drilled for. Vance thought about her crews, 2,800 hours of simulation each. The best prepared military force in human history, the best prepared force in the galaxy, she believed, for this specific fight. More precise than anything they drilled for. She looked at the loss count, 22 ships out of the fight, over 300 still active. They can do it, she said. I believe so, Arya said. But I want to be transparent. If this pattern fails to produce results within approximately 12 minutes, the formation stress will cascade, and we will be in a significantly worse position than if we had simply held the original approach. 12 minutes. Yes. Vance thought about 12 minutes. Do it, she said. Vreth watched from the Allied support formation and did not understand what he was seeing. The human fleet was doing something that looked wrong. His tactical training said it was wrong. The formation they were shifting into violated 3 different basic principles of fleet engagement that he had learned before he was 30. Concentration, coherence, mutual coverage. These were not suggestions. These were the bones of every fleet doctrine that any species had ever developed for a reason. The human fleet appeared to be abandoning all of them simultaneously. Commander Cell said, I see it. Should we? We follow Arya's guidance, he said. He said it firmly. He had made that commitment, and he was going to hold it even when holding it felt like watching someone drive very fast toward the edge of something. His positioning orders came through Arya's overlay a moment later. His ships were being directed to a very specific location in the support formation, not the standard support distance but closer in, tucked into a gap in the human fleet arrangement. He looked at the gap. He looked at where the void's mesh was converging. He understood. The human fleet was not abandoning coherence. It was creating a shape that had to be filled, and the filling was the Allied ships. The human vessels held the outside of the arrangement, grave iron taking the distributed mesh fire from the widest angles, and the Allied ships sat inside that arrangement, protected from the heaviest fire by the human hull ring, but positioned to add their own weapons to the engagement with a full field of fire outward. It looked like chaos from outside. From inside, it was a ring of iron with teeth. All ships, Vreth said, match the Arya positioning, trust it. The 12 minutes almost did not hold. At minute 9, the void identified what the human formation was doing and redirected a significant portion of its mesh toward the seams between the human ships. The gaps where the ring wasn't continuous, where Allied ships were exposed. Arya called it in real time. Seam pressure at sectors 4, 7, and 11, closing now. Human ships moved to close the seams, and in closing the seams created new ones elsewhere, and the void shifted to those, and the human ships moved again. It was a chase around the perimeter of the ring, the void looking for the door, the human ships keeping every door closed while also continuing to fire outward. At minute 11, a seam opened at Sector 2 for approximately 8 seconds before it was closed. 8 seconds was enough. The void put 200 machines through it in the first 3 seconds. Inside the ring, 3 Allied ships took direct fire. One Murren frigate, the Kessler's Bridge Asterisk, named after something in a history Cell did not know, went dark instantly. The other 2 survived with serious damage. The human ships closed the seam and the 200 machines that had come through were inside the ring, which was bad, but they were also enclosed by the ring, which meant they were shooting outward and every human ship's weapons were pointing inward. 200 machines. They lasted 4 minutes. When the last one came apart, Cell realized she had been holding her breath for somewhere around 3 of those 4 minutes, and her hands on her console were shaking. Not from fear, she told herself. Just adrenaline. Just the physical result of watching something that should not have work anyway. She took a breath. She ran the engagement numbers. Void losses since the second engagement began, 3,200 machines. Human ships out of the fight, 31. Allied ships lost, 1. Allied ships with significant damage, 11. The ratio was holding. Different from the first engagement, harder, messier, more expensive, but holding. Arya, Vance said on the open channel, assessment. The void is running a third cycle adjustment, Arya said. They are pulling back the mesh extremities and consolidating. I believe they are preparing to revert to a modified sphere formation. Their mesh approach has produced better results than the forward line, but not the results they needed to break us. They're switching tactics mid-engagement. Yes, they are faster at learning than their historical pattern would suggest. The pressure approach you ordered appears to have shortened their adjustment cycle significantly. A pause. This is good and bad. Good because we are forcing them to spend adaptation time they have not spent before. Bad because their adaptations are coming faster than I can fully model. Vance looked at the board, the void pulling back. Not far, not the same distance as before, just pulling back enough to reform. We go after them during the reform, she said. That is high risk. The reformed sphere will be partially intact when we reach it. Better a partial sphere than a complete one. Arya was quiet for 1 second. Agreed, deploying pursuit pattern now. The fleet moved. The third phase of the engagement, pursuit into a reforming void formation, was the most chaotic fighting Vance had ever experienced. No clean patterns, no elegant formations. Ships moved based on Arya's real-time calls, adjusting constantly, the tactical picture changing faster than any human mind could fully follow. Vance stopped trying to follow all of it and trusted Arya to manage the pieces while she watched for the decisions that needed a human answer. There were several of those. When the Defiant took a direct hit to her main sensor array, and Arya's connection to half the fleet went through a backup channel that was slower and less precise, Vance made a call. She kept the Defiant in the line. The backup connection was enough. Pull the flagship and the fleet lost something more than a sensor array. When a group of Torathi ships in the support formation panicked and broke from their Arya positioning, Sel reported it. Vreth called the Torathi commander directly. Vreth's voice steady and flat and certain in a way that came from 22 years of choosing steadiness when everything else was loud. They came back to position. When the Void tried something it had never tried before, 3 large machines, suddenly moving at extremely high speed directly at the Defiant asterisk, ignoring all fire, running as if they planned to collide, Arya handled it without asking. She redirected 4 ships to intercept before Vance had finished processing the threat. 3 large machines and 4 ships. The 4 ships came back, the 3 machines did not. The engagement came apart at the seams somewhere around the 3-hour mark, not catastrophically, not a collapse, but the formations dissolved into a running fight spread across a huge area of space. Individual ships and small groups, human and Void both, chasing each other through the dark. The big tactical picture became 100 smaller ones. Vance made herself breathe. Breathe, trust Arya, trust the training. Then Arya said something she had never said before. "Admiral, I need to discuss the Ares option." Vance went still. The Ares option was not in the fleet-wide briefing documents. It was not in the tactical manual. It was in a separate file, only that 3 people knew about: Keel, Vance, and Arya. They had never expected to use it this early. "Not yet," Vance said quietly. "Our loss count has reached 58 ships," Arya said. "The Void has lost over 6,000 in this engagement alone, but they still have a significant reserve they have not committed. If they commit the reserve, I project our ability to maintain formation integrity drops significantly." "What's the reserve count?" "Based on signal tracking, approximately 15,000 machines held back from the main engagement body." 15,000. Against what remained of roughly 360 functional ships. Vance thought about the Ares option. She thought about what it would cost to use it, not in ships, not in lives. "In time." "How long until the reserve commits?" she said. "My current projection is between 4 and 7 hours, based on the Void's observed decision-making speed in this engagement." 4 to 7 hours. Can we keep them from committing for 4 hours? "It is possible, not comfortable, but possible." "Then we do that," Vance said, "and I will make a call in 4 hours about the option." "Understood." Word of the ongoing battle had now reached the Grand Council. It had not come through official channels. Drow received the information the way old commanders always receive information that official channels are not ready to carry. From a junior officer who had a contact who had heard from a ship's communications officer who had been in Vreth's fleet and was still transmitting. He read the numbers. He read them again. He sat in his office on the Grand Council station, in the room where he had prepared his remarks for the vote, and he read the numbers one more time. 6,000 Void machines destroyed, rising. Human fleet losses, 58 still operational as an offensive force. Full Allied fleet complement still largely intact. He thought about what he had said at the podium. "We cannot win this war." He thought about Ambassador Lin Dao walking out of the chamber without looking back. He picked up a communications device and opened a direct line to the Human Union delegation. He waited. Lin Dao picked up after 3 rings. "Ambassador," he said. "Ambassador Drow," she said. Her voice was exactly as flat and unmoved as it had been in the chamber. I imagine you've seen the reports. I have. A pause. We asked you, she said, quiet, not unkind, just true. We asked you what you hadn't asked us. Yes, he said. He had nothing else to add to that. What do you want, Ambassador Drow? He looked at the numbers again. 6,058. An active offensive fleet operating against a void force that had been losing every calculation it ran. I want to know, he said slowly, what else you haven't shown us. Lindau was quiet for a moment. That's a long conversation, she said. We have time. She paused again. We may not actually, she said, but I'll tell you about the Ares option and we can go from there. He had not heard that phrase before. What is the Ares option? Something we built for the end, she said. For the moment when everything else has been spent and we still need to finish it. How close are you to that moment? Close, she said. Vance will tell us when it's time. Drow sat with that. Outside his office port, the Grand Council station turned slowly in orbit, and below it the neutral world of Kethsor turned in its own long, indifferent rotation, and somewhere impossibly far away, 400 ships were holding the line against 15,000 machines that had not yet moved. He thought about the vote he had run in the chamber. He thought about what "we cannot win this war" had felt like when he said it. He thought about what it was beginning to feel like now. Tell me, he said, everything. In the 4th hour of the running battle, the Void committed 12,000 machines from its reserve. Not 15,000, 12, it was still holding back. Arya called it the moment the movement registered. Reserve is committing, 12,000, ETA to engagement range, approximately 22 minutes. Vance looked at the board. Her fleet, roughly 340 functional ships, Vreth's force and the other allied ships, another 800 and something, damaged and tired and running on resolve as much as fuel. 22 minutes. She thought about what waited in the cargo holds of the 6 largest ships in her fleet. 6 ships that had been built around a specific purpose, carrying something that had taken 4 years to construct and had never been tested outside a simulation. 6 ships that sat at the center of her formation like the secret they were. She thought about the 4 hours she had asked for. She was 12 minutes short. She made the call. Arya, she said, Ares option, full authorization. Confirmed, Arya said. Initiating now. I recommend all Allied fleet commanders receive an immediate briefing. Do it. And Admiral, you should know that once we begin, we cannot stop at an intermediate point. It is all or nothing. I know, Vance said. That's why we waited this long. In the cargo holds of the 6 central ships, systems that had been dormant for the entire engagement began to power up. They drew more energy than the weapons systems, more than the engines, more than everything else on the ships combined. The lights on the 6 ships dimmed noticeably. The lights on the ships around them dimmed slightly. In Vreth's fleet, Arya's briefing was arriving. Sel read it first and then handed it to Vreth without speaking. He read it. His 4 arms went still. This is real, he said. Admiral Vance built it, Sel said. The schematics are attached. I've been going through them. Is it going to work? Sel looked at the schematics. She was a very good communications officer. She was not an engineer, but she had been in this fight long enough to understand a few things about what engineering could do when the people doing it had been told there was no other way. I think, she said slowly, that it's going to change everything. The Void's reserve moved toward them in the dark, 12,000 machines spread wide, and the 6 human ships at the center of the fleet finished powering up something that had no name in any other language because nothing else in the galaxy had ever tried to build it. The war was about to stop being something the galaxy had been losing. It was about to become something else entirely. The briefing that Arya sent to every Allied commander was 7 pages long, and contained enough technical information to fill a library. Most of the Allied commanders read the first page and stopped. The first page was enough. Vreth read it twice. He read the key line 3 times. The Ares option is a networked resonance disruptor field designed to broadcast a specific frequency set tuned to the electromagnetic signature of void machine cognitive architecture. In simple terms, it does not destroy void machines. It disconnects them. He looked up from the page. Disconnects, he said. From each other, Cell said. She had been reading faster. She was on page 4. The void machines run on a shared processing network. Every machine is connected to every other machine simultaneously. That's how they communicate instantly, how they adjust formations so fast, how they adapt. She paused. The resonance field disrupts the connection frequency, not the machines themselves, the connection. Vreth thought about this. The void was not thousands of separate machines. He knew that. Every strategist in the Union knew that. The void was one thing, spread across thousands of bodies. Remove the connection and you did not have one thing. You had thousands of very complicated pieces of metal with no one home. How long does the field last? He said. That's the problem, Cell said. She had reached page 6. It's not a sustained broadcast. It's a single pulse. They built it as a pulse because a sustained field would require energy levels that aren't physically achievable with current technology. She was quiet for a moment. The pulse duration is estimated at between 90 seconds and 4 minutes, depending on conditions. After that, the void network will reestablish. So it gives us a window. Yes. What do we do with the window? Cell looked at him. The answer was in page 7, but she didn't need to read it to know. We kill as many machines as we can in the window, she said. As many as possible. Disconnected machines revert to last known programming, basic functions, no coordination, no collective intelligence. They become individual problems instead of one massive one. And 400 ships can kill a lot of individual problems. Yes. Vreth thought about the reserve coming in. 12,000 machines. After this engagement, the Void had perhaps 20,000 remaining between what he could estimate from their formation data and what had not yet been committed. 20,000 machines disconnected. And everything the galaxy had left. He opened a channel to every Allied commander in the formation. He didn't do a long speech. He was not built for long speeches in moments like this. You've all read the briefing, he said. When the pulse fires, you spread out and hit everything you can reach. Don't cluster, don't form up. Single ships, pairs, small groups spread across as wide an area as possible and kill whatever is in front of you. Arya will give you targets in real time. Follow them without hesitation. He paused. We have had 63 years of this. This is the window at the end of 63 years. Use it. He closed the channel. Cell was quiet. Commander, she said. Yes. The pulse. It only works if it reaches all the machines simultaneously, if the range is insufficient. Arya has confirmed the range covers the current void formation, he said. What about the reserve, the machine still at distance? He had already thought about this. Arya is managing that. They are delaying the reserve's advance, buying time for the reserve to move into range. Cell looked at the tactical display. The Void's 12,000 machine reserve moving inward. The existing engagement ongoing. Human ships still fighting, still losing ground slowly as the numbers pressed. Buying time. She understood what buying time cost. How many of our ships are going to reach the pulse moment, she said. Vreth did not answer immediately. Enough, he said. Inside the defiant asterisk, Vance was watching numbers she did not like. The reserve was still 4 minutes from full engagement range. The 6 Ares ships needed the reserve inside pulse radius to make the option worth using. Hit the machines that were already fighting, and the machines coming in, all at once, no second chance. Every machine that reached the re-establishment phase while still at operational numbers was a machine they would face again at full coordination. 4 minutes, and her fleet was being pressed. "Arya," she said, "ship status. 291 fully operational, 41 damaged but fighting, 68 out of the fight." A pause. "The Allied fleet has lost 11 ships. Commander Vreth's formation is holding position." 291. She thought about the number. She had started with 419. She had gained more from the Allied forces joining. She had been fighting for nearly 6 hours. 291 ships holding against what was coming. It would hold for 4 more minutes. "What's the reserve distance?" she said. 2 minutes and 40 seconds to pulse radius. "What's our line integrity in 2 minutes and 40 seconds? Arya paused, a longer pause than usual. "Marginal, we will have gaps. The void will have partially broken through our outer formation by the time the reserve enters radius." "Can we hold the Ares ships clear?" "Yes, I am routing all pressure away from the 6 Ares ships currently. The rest of the fleet is taking additional engagement load to compensate." The rest of the fleet, absorbing more fire so the 6 quiet ships at the center could stay intact long enough. She looked out the observation port. She could see nothing with the naked eye. Space was too big, and the battle was spread across too much of it. But she knew they were out there. Her ships, taking hits so the secret in the cargo holds could stay safe for 2 more minutes. "Tell them," she said, "fleet-wide. Tell them why they're absorbing the extra load. Tell them what they're covering." "Admiral, people fight harder when they know what they're fighting for," she said. "Tell them." Transmitting now. On the HUMAS Kessler weapons officer Dana Choi heard the message. She was on her 3rd patch job of the engagement. 2 prior hull seals had been done by the engineering crew, and this one she had done herself with a kit from the emergency locker, because the engineering crew was busy with something more critical. The seal was holding. She was reasonably sure it was holding. The message came through the shipwide channel, Arya's voice, calm as it always was. "The 6 Ares ships require 2 minutes and 15 seconds of clear space to complete their power cycle. The fleet is currently absorbing additional fire to provide that clearance. What those ships are carrying will end this engagement if deployed. Your current position and performance is what makes the deployment possible." 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Dana Choi looked at the seal she had just put on the deck. She looked at her weapons console, which was showing 3 of 6 arrays still functional. She got back to her station. She worked her 3 functional arrays for 2 minutes and 15 seconds like they were 6. The reserve hit engagement range at 2 minutes and 9 seconds. "Close enough." "Ares ships," Vance said, "fire." The pulse did not look like anything. That was the first thing Cell noticed. She had been expecting something visible, some flash, some wave front, some indicator that something significant was happening. She watched her display. Nothing she could see. Then the void formation stopped. Not slowed, not hesitated, stopped. All of it. The reserve, the main engagement body, the machines that had been in close range fighting with human ships 30 seconds ago. Every machine, simultaneously, stopped exactly where it was. The shooting stopped. For 1 full second, there was no fire from the void at all. Cell had been in this war for 11 years. She had not once, in 11 years, experienced a second of silence from the void. Then the fleet-wide channel opened and Arya's voice came through, steady as always. "Pulse delivered. Confirmed network disruption across all void machines in radius. Window is active. All ships engaged now." And the galaxy came apart. Vreth's ships moved the moment Arya called it. He had drilled his crews on this during the 4-hour maintenance window, running through the basic idea of what to do when the void stopped coordinating, spread wide, hit everything in range, keep moving. He had not known about the pulse at that point, but he had known from the human engagement tactics that individual void machines, deprived of their collective coordination, were dramatically less dangerous. Now he knew exactly how true that was. A void machine operating alone was still a sophisticated weapons platform. It could shoot. It could move. It could take damage and keep functioning. It was still dangerous in the way that any armed and armored machine was dangerous. It was not the Void. The Void was 63 years of collective, coordinated intelligence adapting in real time to every threat it encountered. A single machine was a very complex piece of equipment operating on its last known instructions, with no one updating those instructions. The difference was everything. Vreth's ship swept through the closest machines in under 3 minutes, and the machines shot back along predictable lines, without adjustment, without the terrifying real-time recoordination that had defined every void engagement in his entire career. He watched a Velhari frigate take fire that would have been a killing blow in any previous fight, soak it, and return fire that gutted the machine. 11 seconds to hull breach in a standard engagement. This was not a standard engagement anymore. He pushed his ships forward. Arya ran the window. 90 seconds to 4 minutes, she had briefed. She tracked the re-establishment signal in real time, the faint hum of void machine transponders searching for each other, trying to rebuild the connection the pulse had severed. In the first minute, nothing, disconnection holding. She directed every ship with an active weapons array toward target assignments based on proximity, threat level, and the geography of where concentrated kills would do the most damage to the Void's remaining total numbers before re-establishment happened. In the second minute, she detected the first re-establishment attempts. Faint, unsuccessful. The closest machines to each other were trying to reconnect, but the pulse had not just interrupted the signal. It had overwritten the frequency handshake, and the machines needed time to find the new handshake before they could rebuild the network. She had time. In the third minute, the kill count crossed 8,000 machines. 8,000 in 3 minutes. The previous record was 6,000 in a full engagement. The Allied ships were doing tremendous work. Vreth's fleet had split into exactly the kind of spread attack pattern he had briefed, individual ships and pairs moving at speed through the frozen void formation, firing and moving, not stopping long enough to give any individual machine the time to get a proper bead on them. In the fourth minute, the re-establishment attempts became more organized. Network re-establishment in approximately 90 seconds, Arya called. The kill count crossed 11,000. 60 seconds. 13,000. 30 seconds. 14,200. Vance looked at the board. The remaining void machines somewhere around 6,000 distributed across a wide area of space. A large number. In any previous context, a terrifying number. In the current context, a number that had just spent 4 minutes being individually killed by every ship she had. 10 seconds. 14,700. Re-establishment complete. The void snapped back. The remaining machines reconnected. The collective intelligence rebuilt itself across 6,000 bodies instead of 21,000. It assessed its situation. It calculated its losses. It processed the new information. It processed that it had lost 14,700 machines in 4 minutes. It processed that it was currently outnumbered by a combined human and allied fleet that was not retreating. For the first time in 63 years, the Void arrived at a calculation that every living being in the galaxy understood instinctively, but that the Void had never needed to learn. It ran the math on fighting and ran the math on not fighting. The math said the same thing both ways. It began to withdraw. Not reorganize, not adjust, not pull back to a safe distance for reforming. It withdrew. Vance watched the display for a full 10 seconds to be certain of what she was seeing. Then she opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships," she said, "they're running." She let that sit for a moment. "We follow." The pursuit lasted 19 hours. The Void did not stop to reform. It did not try new tactics. It ran, and the human fleet chased it, and the Allied ships chased alongside, and the Void shed machines at every engagement because the remaining 6,000 were still fighting with the intelligence of the collective, still adapting, still learning, still dangerous. But they were 6,000 against everything humanity had brought, and the math had stopped working for them 23 hours ago and had not started working since. At the 11-hour mark of the pursuit, Arya called a new count. 3,000 Void machines remaining. At the 16-hour mark, 1,200. At hour 19, the pursuit came to an end in a region of space that had no notable features. No stars nearby, no planets, no debris fields. Just open space, and the remnant of what had consumed 300 worlds caught between the human fleet and the Allied ships and nowhere useful to go. Vance looked at the display. 214 machines. "Arya," she said. "Yes, Admiral." "Can any of them escape the engagement zone?" A pause. "No. Formation has complete coverage." She thought about what she was about to do. She thought about 300 worlds. She thought about what lived in those 214 machines, 63 years of accumulated intelligence, the ghost of whatever civilization had built them, a mind that was old and had never once known defeat before 5 days ago. She thought about what happened to the galaxy if she let any part of it survive. "Finish it," she said. The last Void machine came apart at hour 19, 31 minutes and 44 seconds into the pursuit. Arya noted the timestamp. She noted it because she had told Vance once during a quiet late shift in year 2 of the Kupla project, recording the exact moment things ended seemed important. Not just for history, for the people who had been inside those moments and would want to know later, when exactly the thing they had feared became the thing they didn't have to fear anymore. The timestamp went into the record. 3 days later, the Grand Council convened an emergency session. The chamber was full, every seat. Species that had been in full retreat when the session was called had turned their ships around and made transit in time to attend. Drell had sent personal messages to every delegation head the hour after he had spoken to Lunda, and the messages had carried enough data to answer most questions before anyone could ask them. Most questions. Lunda sat in the human section of the upper tier. She had been awake for most of the last 4 days. She looked like it. She did not look like a person who particularly cared that she looked like it. Drell stood at the center podium. His 4 arms were moving. They moved the way they always did when he had a great deal to say and was still deciding how to say it. "The Void conflict," he said, "is over." He let that sit. He had been trying to find additional words for 20 minutes and could not, so he had decided to start with that and see what followed. The combined human and Allied fleet, under the command of Admiral Sierra Vance of the Human Union, engaged and destroyed the Void's remaining forces over a period of approximately 5 days of active combat operations. Total Void losses are confirmed at 21,412 machines. Total human fleet losses are confirmed at 89 ships. He paused. Total Allied fleet losses are 14 ships. Total crew losses are still being calculated. The chamber was silent. "I want to be clear about what I am saying," Droll said. "The Human Union engaged the Void with a fleet that no other member of this council knew existed. They did this using weapons technology developed in isolation without Union support. They did this using tactical doctrine developed in isolation without Union collaboration. They did this using a weapon, classified as the Ares option by the Human Union, that we did not know was possible until 72 hours before it was deployed." He looked at the human section. We voted to end this war because we determined it could not be won, he said. We were wrong. We were wrong because we did not ask the right questions. We did not ask what the human union was capable of. We assumed. He stopped. We assumed they were what we could see. We did not consider what they were building where we were not looking. The chamber was still quiet. I want to understand something, said Ambassador Hurrick of the Mun. His voice was careful. The human union developed this capability over 11 years. During that time, they participated in Union military councils. They submitted fleet reports. They sent ships to the front. He paused. They reported 17 active warships. Yes, Lunda said from the upper tier. And they had 400. 419, by final count. Hurrick was quiet for a moment. Why? The chamber waited. Lunda stood. She was still shorter than almost everything in the room. She still did not seem to notice. Because we tried to contribute to the combined strategy for the first 8 years, she said. We raised ideas that were not adopted. We raised concerns that were not addressed. We raised requests for resources that were not granted. Her voice was even. Every year, we watched the combined fleet do the same things in the same ways and get the same results. Every year, the line moved in the wrong direction and the number on the red circles got higher. She paused. We decided that if we were going to do something different, we needed to do it ourselves. And if we were going to do it ourselves, we needed to do it where no one would interfere with it before it was ready. Silence. We voted no, she said. At the council, 1 vote. We stood up and said we had not been asked and that we believed there was more we could do. No one asked us what we meant. She looked at Drill. You asked me later. I appreciate that. Drill inclined his head, a Volhuri gesture of acknowledgement that also carried something close to apology. I should have asked sooner. Yes, she said simply. Admiral Vance was not at the Grand Council session. She was on the Dufunt Esturusk, in the space where the last engagement had been fought, overseeing the work of recovery. There were ships to repair, crew to account for, the long and unglamorous task of coming down from 5 days of war. She was drinking coffee. It was hot for once. Arya spoke. Ambassador Duh is transmitting from Kuthsa. She says the session is going well. Good. She also says Ambassador Drull has formally proposed a full restructuring of the Union Military Council, with the Human Union in a permanent senior advisory position. What did she say back? She said she would consider it. Vance looked out the observation port. The wreckage of the final engagement was visible at distance, debris fields, the broken pieces of 21,000 machines spread across a wide stretch of space. In a few years, she supposed, some of this debris would drift into new orbits. Some of it would become hazard markers on future star maps. Some of it would just keep going outward, past any place that had a name. Past anywhere anyone would ever be. 63 years. 300 worlds. 89 ships. She sat with those numbers for a while. Arya, she said. Yes, Admiral. Pull up the contact record for Commander Vreth. Ready. Put me through. The line connected after a moment. Vreth's voice, a little tired, steady underneath it. Admiral Vance. Commander, you're still here. Where would I go? He said. There is cleanup to do. My fleet is helping. I know, I can see you on the board. She paused. I wanted to ask you something. Go ahead. She thought about how to say it. She thought about the vote, about 38-1, about what it was going to take to rebuild the kind of trust that made something like that not happen again. When you get back to the council, she said, when everyone sits down and starts talking about what comes next, I want you on our side of the table for that conversation. Not because you owe us anything, because you were there. You saw all of it. And I think the conversation is going to need someone who was there and is not human to make it go right. A pause on the line. "You are asking me to advocate for the human union in a political proceeding," he said. "I'm asking you to tell the truth about what you saw," she said. "That's different." Another pause. She heard the familiar sound of the Velhari command deck behind him, different console tones, different ambient sounds than a human ship. "Yes," he said, "I will do that." "Good." She closed the line. She drank her coffee while it was still hot. Outside, in the quiet of the space around her, the debris of 63 years of the worst thing that had ever happened to the inhabited galaxy slowly, silently drifted. Ships from a dozen species moved through it, recording it, recovering what they could, marking what they couldn't. And on 300 cold worlds scraped clean of everything that had lived there. Nothing moved, and nothing would for a very long time. Vance knew those worlds were there. She kept them there in the back of her mind, because the thing about studying failure for 11 years was that you learned to keep the cost of failure somewhere you could always reach it. 300 worlds. Not 301. That was the thing she had spent 11 years building toward. Not the glory of the final engagement, not the record kill counts, not the 400-ship fleet or the Ares option or any of the numbers that the Grand Council was going to read and reread and absorb over the next many years. Just not 301. She finished her coffee. She set the cup down. "Arya," she said, "what's next on the repair priority list?" "The Kessler asterisk," Arya said. "Her hull integrity is at 62%. She needs significant attention before she's safe for transit." "Send engineering over." "Already dispatched." Vance turned from the observation port and walked back to her console, and the work of the day continued. And the war that had lasted 63 years did not last 63 years and one day. It ended. In the only way anything like that ever really ends, not with a speech, not with a ceremony, but with people who were still standing turning to look at what was left and deciding, one task at a time, to build it back. The galaxy had cried that the war was lost. Humanity had disagreed. In the end, the math was simple. They were right.